Sometimes the hardest truth to accept isn't that someone hurt you, it's that they were never meant to stay. We spend so much of our lives trying to fit into places that quietly reject us, holding on to people who drain our peace, convincing ourselves that if we try harder, love harder, or become less of who we are, things will finally work. But life has a way of removing what no longer aligns with our growth, not as punishment, but as protection. This is not a story about loss. This is a story about clarity, about understanding that when someone walks away or fails to see your worth, it doesn't mean you are unlovable. It means they were not right for you. And the moment you accept that truth, you stop begging for belonging and start choosing yourself. There is a moment in every life when silence becomes louder than words, when absence speaks more clearly than presence, and when you finally feel what you've been trying to ignore. It is not anger that wakes you up. It is not betrayal. It is a quiet realization that something feels wrong in your chest, not sharp, not violent, just heavy. A weight that has been sitting there for too long. You call it love, you call it loyalty, you call it hope, but deep down you know it is exhaustion. You are tired of explaining yourself, tired of justifying why you stay, tired of pretending that the way you are treated is acceptable. You tell yourself that everyone struggles, that relationships take work, that nothing meaningful is easy, but there is a difference between effort and erasing yourself. There is a difference between patience and pain, and you have been confusing the two. You didn't lose them. You found yourself standing in the truth. You did not fail to hold on. You finally learned how to let go, because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that what you are holding is slowly breaking you. Sometimes strength looks like walking away from what you begged for yesterday. Sometimes healing begins the moment you stop chasing what keeps running from you. You were not abandoned. You were released from a story that no longer fit your soul. You were freed from a version of yourself that kept shrinking just to be chosen. And the hardest part is not the leaving. The hardest part is accepting that you stayed too long, hoping they would change, hoping you would be enough, hoping love would suddenly become gentle. You keep replaying memories like they are proof that it was real. You hold on to the good moments like they cancel out the pain, but memories are not promises. And the past cannot carry the weight of your future. You cannot build tomorrow on yesterday's apologies. You cannot heal in the same place that taught you to doubt your worth. You deserve to breathe without fear. You deserve to speak without being silenced. You deserve to be loved without conditions attached. Yet you keep bargaining with yourself, telling yourself that if you try one more time, if you forgive one more time, if you wait a little longer, something will change. But waiting for someone to become who they are not is a slow form of self-abandonment. You are not weak for loving deeply. You are not foolish for hoping. You are not broken because you wanted it to work. But you must understand that love is not supposed to feel like a constant battle for permission to exist. You are not meant to fight for basic respect. You are not meant to prove your value to someone who benefits from your silence. Love does not require you to betray yourself. Love does not ask you to accept less than you deserve. Love does not demand that you stay small so someone else can feel big. And the moment you recognize that, everything begins to shift inside you. They were not right for you, not because they were evil, not because they were cruel on purpose, but because your paths were not aligned. Their timing did not match your becoming. Their heart could not hold the depth of yours. Their vision could not see the future you were growing toward. And that is not a failure. That is a truth that hurts but also heals, a truth that closes one door so another can finally open. You do not need everyone to understand you. You only need the courage to understand yourself. There is a strange peace that comes when you stop forcing what does not flow, when you stop trying to convince someone to meet you where they have never been willing to stand, when you accept that some people are only meant to be chapters, not the whole story. You can honor what was without living there forever. You can be grateful without being stuck. You can love without staying. And in that acceptance, you begin to feel lighter, not because it doesn't hurt, but because you are no longer carrying what was never yours to hold. You were never asking for too much. You were simply asking the wrong person. You were never too sensitive. You were simply feeling something real in a place that was emotionally empty. You were never hard to love. You were just loving someone who could not love you back in the way you need, dead. And that realization, as painful as it is also powerful because it returns your power to you. It reminds you that you do not need to chase what is meant to stay. You do not need to beg for what is meant to be given freely. You are allowed to walk away from what no longer serves your growth. You are allowed to outgrow people. You are allowed to choose yourself without guilt. You are allowed to say, this hurts too much. This costs too much. This is not who I want to become. You are allowed to want more, not more attention, not more apologies, but more peace, more honesty, more presence, more love that feels safe instead of uncertain. Every ending is a beginning in disguise. Every goodbye carries the seed of a new hello. Every loss creates space for something better. You may not see it yet, you may not feel it yet, but one day you will look back and realize that this was the moment your life changed, the moment you stopped settling, the moment you stopped waiting, the moment you started choosing what chooses you. And even though your heart is still healing, even though the memories still ache, even though the questions still linger, you are moving forward. You are becoming someone who no longer accepts half love, half effort, half truths. They were not right for you, and that does not make you unworthy. It makes you ready, ready for a love that does not feel like a test, ready for a connection that does not leave you guessing, ready for a life that feels like home. And as you stand in this new space between what was and what will be, you begin to understand that letting go was never about losing them. It was about finding yourself. You keep asking yourself what you did wrong, where you failed, why they stopped choosing you. You replay conversations in your mind like broken records, searching for the exact moment things shifted. But not every ending is caused by a mistake. Not every loss is a reflection of your worth. Sometimes people leave because they are not ready to grow, not ready to face themselves, not ready to meet you at the level where you are standing. And instead of seeing that truth, you turn the blame inward. You shrink your heart, question your value, and convince yourself that if you were better, quieter, stronger, more patient, more beautiful, more understanding, they would have stayed. But love is not a reward you earn by becoming someone else. Your worth does not increase when someone chooses you, and it does not disappear when they walk away. You were valuable long before they noticed you. You were enough before they ever entered your life. You will remain enough even after they are gone. Their decision does not define your destiny. Their absence does not cancel your existence. You are not invisible because someone failed to see you. You are not empty because someone left a space behind. You are still whole, still breathing, still capable of creating a life that feels real. You cannot measure your value by someone else's capacity to love. Some people only know how to take. Some people only know how to receive without giving. Some people confuse attention with connection and comfort with commitment, and when they walk away, you assume it is because you were not enough. But the truth is, you were too much for a heart that could not hold you. Too deep for someone who only swims in shallow waters. Too real for someone who lives in escape. You offered them something they did not know how to keep. There is a quiet strength in realizing that you do not need validation to exist. You do not need approval to be worthy. You do not need someone else's love to prove your own value. You are not an option waiting to be chosen. You are a person deserving of respect, honesty, and care. And the moment you stop begging for attention, you start commanding presence. The moment you stop proving your worth, you begin to live it. You are allowed to let go of people who only see your light when it benefits them. You are allowed to walk away from those who only remember your value when you are about to leave. You are allowed to protect your heart from being treated like something disposable. Your love is not a resource to be wasted. Your time is not something to be taken for granted. Your energy is not meant to fill empty spaces that never give back. You were never meant to stay where you are constantly questioned, constantly doubted, constantly made to feel like you must earn a place in someone's life. You deserve to be chosen without hesitation. You deserve to be valued without conditions. You deserve to be loved without fear of being replaced. And when you accept that truth, you stop chasing what does not choose you, and you start becoming someone who chooses themselves. You keep making yourself smaller so someone else can feel comfortable. You lower your voice, soften your truth, hide the parts of you that shine too bright, all because you are afraid of losing them. You convince yourself that love requires sacrifice, that if you change just enough, if you become quieter, easier, less demanding, they will finally stay. But love that asks you to disappear is not love. It is fear wearing a gentle mask. It is control disguised as care. And every time you silence yourself, you lose another piece of who you are. You were not born to fit into someone else's limits. You were not meant to bend until you break. You were not created to live in a space where your voice feels heavy and your presence feels like a burden. The right people never ask you to become smaller. They do not compete with your light. They do not feel threatened by your growth. They do not need you to hide your strength to protect their comfort. They stand beside you, not above you, not in front of you, not holding you back. You should never have to choose between love and being yourself. You should never have to shrink your dreams so someone else can sleep peacefully. You should never have to dim your fire to keep someone warm. Real connection does not make you feel guilty for wanting more. It does not make you question your right to exist fully. It does not make you apologize for your emotions, your boundaries, your goals, your truth. When someone truly sees you, they do not try to change your essence. They do not rewrite your story. They do not ask you to erase your past or silence your future. They accept your strength, your flaws, your depth, your ambition, your softness, your fire. They do not fear your becoming. They grow with you. They do not feel small around you. They rise with you. You have spent too long believing that love requires pain, that loyalty means endurance, that commitment means tolerating what hurts you. But real love does not drain you. It does not confuse you. It does not make you doubt your value. It does not force you to choose between peace and connection. It does not leave you feeling empty in a room that is supposed to feel like home. You are allowed to be big in a world that tries to make you quiet. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to dream loudly, love deeply, speak honestly, and walk confidently. You do not have to apologize for who you are becoming. You do not have to explain why you refuse to stay small. You do not have to beg for permission to grow. One day you will meet people who celebrate your growth instead of fearing it, who admire your strength instead of trying to control it, who feel inspired by your light instead of trying to dim it. And when that day comes, you will understand why everything before had to fall apart, why every wrong connection had to end, why every moment of doubt had to teach you this truth, that the right people never ask you to become smaller. At first, peace feels unfamiliar, almost suspicious. You wake up without anxiety sitting heavy on your chest, without checking your phone, hoping for a message that may never come, without rehearsing conversations in your head that you were never brave enough to speak out loud. And instead of relief, you feel strange, because chaos had become normal. Emotional tension had become routine. Uncertainty had become home. You were so used to surviving emotional storms that calm felt empty, like something was missing. But what was missing was not love. What was missing was the noise that kept you distracted from yourself. Peace does not arrive with fireworks. It comes quietly. It slips into your life when you finally stop fighting reality, when you stop resisting what is, when you stop trying to fix what was never yours to repair. Peace is not the absence of pain. It is the absence of pretending that you are okay when you are not, pretending that someone cares when their actions say otherwise, pretending that staying is noble when it is slowly destroying you. And the moment you let go of that performance, something inside you finally exhales. You begin to notice how light your body feels without constant emotional pressure, how your thoughts slow down when you are no longer waiting for someone to change, how your heart feels safer when it is no longer exposed to mixed signals and broken promises. You realize that love was never meant to feel like anxiety. Connection was never meant to keep you awake at night. Commitment was never meant to make you question your value. And in that realization, peace becomes your teacher. Peace shows you what alignment feels like. It shows you how life flows when you stop forcing it. when you stop chasing people who run from responsibility, when you stop explaining your worth to those who benefit from misunderstanding you, you begin to trust your intuition again. That quiet voice you ignored for so long because you were afraid of being alone, that voice was never wrong. It was only drowned out by fear, fear of abandonment, fear of starting over, fear of choosing yourself. There is a deep strength in choosing peace over attachment, in choosing calm over chaos, in choosing clarity over confusion. You realize that not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay, and not everyone who leaves is a loss. Some departures are answers, some endings are protection, some heartbreaks are redirections that save you years of pain you never had to experience. And when you look at it that way, gratitude replaces regret. You stop romanticizing struggle. You stop glorifying pain as proof of love. You stop believing that loyalty means suffering in silence. You understand that real love does not cost you your nervous system. Real love does not require you to be constantly on edge. Real love does not make you feel unsafe in your own mind. And the more peace you feel, the clearer it becomes that what you left behind was not love, but familiarity. Peace teaches you boundaries. It teaches you to say no without guilt, to walk away without explanations, to protect your energy without apologizing. You no longer feel the need to convince anyone of your value. You no longer chase closure from people who never gave clarity. You no longer wait for apologies that may never come. Because peace has shown you that closure is a decision, not a conversation. As time passes, you start to recognize the version of yourself that was buried under emotional survival, the one who laughs without forcing it, the one who dreams without fear of being judged, the one who feels grounded instead of constantly anxious. And you realize that choosing peace did not make you cold. It made you honest. It did not make you distant. It made you clear. It did not make you selfish. It made you whole. Peace becomes your standard, your filter, your guide. You measure everything by how it makes you feel afterward, not how intense it feels in the moment. You choose conversations that leave you calm, not confused. You choose people who feel safe, not addictive. You choose situations that nourish you, not drain you. And without realizing it, you step into life that feels steady, intentional, and real. Peace is not boring. It is powerful. It is the result of hard decisions, painful goodbyes, and deep self-respect. It is the proof that you finally listened to yourself, the proof that you stopped ignoring the signs, the proof that you chose the right direction, even when it was lonely, even when it was uncomfortable, even when it required you to walk away from what you once begged for. What you miss is not their presence, but the version of the future you built around them, the conversations you imagined, the moments you believed would eventually arrive, the change you were certain would happen if you waited just a little longer. You are grieving a possibility, not a reality. You are mourning a dream, not a person. And that is why the pain feels confusing. Because part of you knows the truth, yet another part still holds on to hope. Even after everything has shown you otherwise, you remember their potential more clearly than their behavior. You remember who they could have been instead of who they consistently were. You hold on to the promises, the rare good days, the moments when things almost felt right. But almost is not enough. Almost love is still loneliness. Almost commitment is still uncertainty. Almost effort is still neglect. And yet you keep replaying those fragments like they represent the whole story, even when the rest of the story was filled with disappointment. Your mind creates comfort from familiarity. It softens the edges of pain and highlights the moments that made you feel seen. That is why you start questioning your decision, why you wonder if you left too soon, why you forget how heavy your heart felt when you stayed, why you forget how often you felt unheard, unchosen, unvalued. Nostalgia is powerful. It edits the truth. It convinces you that the past was safer than the present. Even when it was slowly hurting you, you were attached to the idea that love could fix everything, that patience would eventually be rewarded, that consistency would appear if you proved yourself enough. But love is not built on hope alone. It is built on action, on effort, on presence, on choosing each other every day without confusion. And when those things are missing, no amount of wishing can create them. You cannot love someone into becoming who they are not ready to be. You miss the feeling of belonging you thought they represented. You miss the security you believed would come once things finally worked out. You miss the version of yourself that believed love would be simple if you just held on. But that version of you was surviving on expectation, not reality. And letting go of that hope hurts because it feels like letting go of a part of yourself. Healing begins when you separate who they were from who you wanted them to be. When you stop romanticizing what never existed. When you allow yourself to see the pattern instead of the exception. When you accept that your longing is not proof that they were right for you, but proof that you invested deeply in something that did not meet you halfway. You are not weak for missing them. You are human. You are not foolish for hoping. You are open. But missing someone does not mean you should return to what broke you. Longing does not erase reality. Desire does not change behavior. And clarity does not mean the pain disappears. It means you stop lying to yourself about what you lost. As you release the fantasy, you begin to grieve properly, not with denial, but with honesty. You stop asking why you were not enough and start understanding that no amount of love can replace readiness. No amount of patience can create alignment. No amount of sacrifice can turn potential into commitment. One day the ache softens, not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped hoping for something that was never coming. And in that space, something real begins to grow. A connection that does not live in imagination. A love that does not depend on waiting. A future that does not require you to abandon yourself. And slowly, without force, without urgency, you begin to feel free. Clarity does not arrive gently. It does not whisper comforting lies or soften the truth to protect your feelings. Clarity cuts through illusion. It removes excuses. It forces you to see what you have been avoiding, and that is why it hurts. Because clarity asks you to accept reality as it is, not as you hoped it would become. It asks you to stop rewriting the story to make someone fit into a role they never chose to play. It asks you to face the truth that the pain you were tolerating was not temporary, but a pattern. Confusion, on the other hand, feels safer at first. Confusion gives you space to doubt yourself instead of the situation. It allows you to stay without fully committing to the truth. It keeps hope alive, even when evidence is gone. Confusion tells you, maybe tomorrow will be different, maybe they will change, maybe you misunderstood, maybe you are asking for too much. And day after day, you live inside that maybe, slowly losing your sense of direction, your self-trust, your peace. Clarity hurts once because it ends the debate inside your mind. It closes the door you kept opening just to check if something had changed. It removes the illusion that effort alone could fix what was fundamentally misaligned. It brings grief, yes, but it also brings honesty, and honesty, even when painful, allows healing to begin. Confusion never heals, it only delays the wound while letting it deepen. You stayed confused because clarity meant loss. It meant accepting that the person you loved could not meet you where you stood. It meant acknowledging that what you wanted was not unreasonable, just unavailable in that connection. It meant letting go of the fantasy that if you endured long enough, things would finally make sense. Confusion gave you time, but it stole your energy. It stole your confidence. It stole your ability to trust your own judgment. Living in confusion feels like standing in a room with flickering lights. Nothing is completely dark, but nothing is fully visible either. You keep bumping into the same pain, the same disappointment, the same unanswered questions. You adjust yourself instead of adjusting your boundaries. You blame your sensitivity instead of their inconsistency, and slowly you start believing that instability is normal, that anxiety is love, that uncertainty is passion. Clarity brings silence where chaos used to live, and at first, that silence feels heavy. You miss the noise, the constant emotional stimulation, the highs and lows that made everything feel intense. But intensity is not intimacy, chaos is not connection. And once the noise fades, you realize how tired you were, how much energy you spent trying to read signals, decode silence, interpret moods, and predict reactions. Clarity frees you from that constant mental labor. When you choose clarity, you stop asking questions that never had answers. You stop waiting for explanations that were never coming. You stop hoping for closure from someone who could not even offer consistency. Clarity teaches you that understanding does not always come from conversation. Sometimes it comes from observation, from patterns, from how someone shows up when it matters. Confusion keeps you emotionally available to someone who is emotionally unavailable. It keeps you half present in your own life. It keeps you investing in something that gives nothing back. And the longer you stay there, the more you normalize the pain. You start believing that this is just how love feels. But clarity reminds you that love should not leave you constantly questioning your place in someone's life. Choosing clarity requires courage. It requires you to disappoint the version of yourself that hoped things would work out. It requires you to grieve what could have been while honoring what is. It requires you to stop negotiating with reality. And that moment, when you finally accept the truth without adding conditions or excuses, hurts deeply, but it also sets you free. Clarity restores your self-trust. It teaches you to listen to that quiet discomfort you kept ignoring. It reminds you that your feelings were signals, not weaknesses, that your exhaustion was information, that your pain was not random. And once you see clearly, you cannot unsee it. You cannot return to confusion without betraying yourself. The pain of clarity fades with time. The pain of confusion compounds. One ends, the other repeats. And when you look back, you realize that the moment you chose clarity was the moment you chose yourself, even though it hurt, even though it cost you something, even though it forced you to walk away from what you once wanted more than anything. For a long time, you believed there was something wrong with you, that you asked for too much, that your emotions were too intense, your needs too heavy, your presence too demanding. Every time someone pulled away, you took it as evidence. Every silence felt like confirmation. Every distance felt like a verdict. And slowly, without realizing it, you started editing yourself to become easier to keep. You gave less, spoke less, expected less, hoping that shrinking would finally make you lovable. But love is not about convenience. It is not about fitting into spaces that cannot hold you. You were never meant to be reduced to survive a connection. You were never difficult. You were simply offering depth in a place that only knew how to skim the surface. You were speaking a language that the environment could not understand. And instead of questioning the place, you question yourself. Some spaces are not built for growth. Some people are not equipped to love what is real, what is honest, what is emotionally present. They are comfortable with distance. They are familiar with avoidance. They confuse intensity with danger and vulnerability with weakness. When you bring warmth into a cold room, the room does not suddenly become warm. It just reminds you that you do not belong there. You were not too much. You were in the wrong environment. You were not overwhelming. You were surrounded by people who were underdeveloped emotionally. You were not asking for too much love. You were asking the wrong people to love you in ways they did not know how to offer. And that mismatch created pain that you blamed on yourself. When you step into the right place, something shifts without effort. You are not constantly misunderstood. You are not explaining your needs like they are demands. You are not apologizing for wanting consistency, honesty, and care. Your presence is not questioned. Your feelings are not minimized. You are not made to feel guilty for being human. In the right space, love feels natural. It does not require translation. It does not demand that you justify your emotions. It does not punish you for being expressive. You are allowed to exist fully without fear of being rejected for it. And in that environment, you realize how much energy you wasted trying to bloom in soil that was never fertile. You do not need to become someone else to be loved. You need to be somewhere else, somewhere your values align, somewhere your heart feels safe, somewhere your depth is met with depth, not distance. And when you finally understand that truth, the narrative changes. You stop asking what is wrong with you and start asking where you truly belong. There are people who will recognize you immediately, not because you are perfect, but because you are real. People who will not be intimidated by your honesty or exhausted by your emotions. People who will not ask you to tone yourself down to be acceptable. And when you meet them, you will understand why every place before felt so painful, why every connection before felt so hard, why you always felt like you were trying to earn love instead of receiving it. You were never hard to love. You were simply in the wrong place, giving your heart to spaces that could not protect it, waiting for warmth in rooms that never learned how to hold it.